This will be a quick one today, folks. It's one story. But you'll have to listen to 2 Samuel 1 from a few days ago.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
To the Bible.
Wait.
What? Hey, we did it.
Worked well, that one.
Worked well.
As Rohan gave the preamble over the top of the intro there, we're into a story here which harkens back to chapter 1. It's the same story, just a slightly different
characters.
Different characters.
The characters have been changed to protect the guilty. Well, in this case, to expose the
guilty.
guilty.
Expose the guilty, yeah. And again, if you go back to chapter 1, we'll still go through the story. We'll still go and we'll recap some of the same things.
There's implications, but it's Ishbosheth's death, his murder, and there's implications for Ishbosheth based on everything we've been saying in previous chapters about his weakness and ultimately his lack of ability to carry the loyalty of his people.
Yep.
So there's that aspect of it, but there's also just a reiteration for us in practical terms on the implications for us trying to curry favour with leaders through political scheming.
Yep. So again, this is one where if you haven't listened to chapter 1 and maybe something tweaks in here that, or we maybe say, or as we spoke about in chapter 1, and you want to maybe go listen a little bit more, you can just jump back into chapter 1 and have a listen through that one, and you'll find that section there where we talk about pretty much when someone brings the proof that someone had died
thinking they're going to
get good news.
Yep.
Well,
that's what happens.
This is what happens. So
hopefully you won't get your head chopped off and hung on a tree, but figuratively speaking, you may.
Yes. So Ishbosheth, son of Saul, heard about Abner's death at Hebron, and he lost all courage. A man that maybe didn't have much courage to start with.
He's just lost the last bit
so
of
he
it.
became so much so that he was paralyzed with fear. All of Israel became paralyzed with fear. This is the Abner, I suppose, was this last sort of pillar of strength for Israel. And then probably not knowing exactly what happened at Hebron.
That's right. It's not like it's on the internet and everyone can see the funeral march, and it's all word of mouth across a very large amount of ground. So I can understand why there were people in Israel who were holding out hope for David.
Yep. Thinking that, maybe that David's now gone and then killed Abner and not accepted that peace offering and is now going to come through and try and roll through the land and take everyone out.
That's right. They wouldn't know. They wouldn't have all those.
And they even know that as David hasn't shown that, at the same time, they would understand that if David took that action after all that Saul did,
would be totally expected, wouldn't it?
Because every other king probably would have done the same thing.
That's right.
So they'd be understandable.
Yes, it's good to put ourselves in these narratives, because if we think about it from the perspective of geography and distance and time and horseback travel and everything else, and the fact we don't have any way of wide broadcast, it travels on the back of one person telling another. So it makes total sense that it would cause them to lose courage.
Yeah.
Dave and his army are going to show up here and they're going to kill us all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now there were two brothers, Banar and Rechab. Would it be Rechab? It'd be more of a sound, wouldn't it? Rechab?
Yeah, it'd be and the B would be a V, and it's probably Rechab. Rekav is how it would be if you was trying to say it in Hebrew. I reckon Rekav.
Okay. So
I don't think
Hebrew, that. Again, apologies to any Hebrew listeners out there, but it probably end up being.
We'll go with Recab.
Recab. It'll be an Australian
like a taxi company.
All right, I won't go down the tangents. My brain was thinking of jingles and stuff like that, so we won't do that. So they were captains of. So they're Benjamites. Oh, well, they're probably Benjamites.
They're probably Benjamites, or yes. Well, let's assume.
Oh, a member of Benjamin.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
There you go.
Yep.
So obviously, I'm
we're
going
back
through
to Benjamites again,
pulling that information from somewhere.
Yeah, I've never seen this whole Benjamin connection so tightly post Saul's death as we've seen in this episode. These conversations this week.
So they were part of the raiding parties. They were sons of Rimmon, a member of the tribe of Benjamin, who lived in Beeroth. The town of Beeroth is part of Benjamin's territory because the original people of Beeroth fled to Gittayim.
Yep.
And they still live there as foreigners. So it's just that tribe of Benjamin. So they're very much, these were Benjamites killing Benjamites.
So.
Spoiler.
Yeah.
These two people are about to kill.
Their king.
Yeah. So Saul's son Jonathan had a son named Mephibosheth. So this is where we talk about Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth. Oh my gosh.
Mephibosheth.
Yeah.
I got it right.
You got it right.
Been practicing that because I recorded 48 hours ago with Phil Wynn and we couldn't say it 3 times in a hurry.
Who was crippled as a child. So this is where, so we won't talk about him very much at all, but this is to know how it happened and where it happened. So at this point, obviously, he would have still been part of the royal family.
Yes.
He would have been there. So he was crippled as a child. So he was 5 years old when the report came that Saul and Jonathan had been killed. Mm-hmm. So when the child's nurse heard the news, she picked him up and fled. But as she hurried away, she dropped him, and he became crippled.
And this is all in brackets in the NLT. So
it's probably been placed in.
This has been placed in to give us some context. Because he's technically an heir to the throne.
Yeah.
And he's still alive.
So this is to say that even though, and we don't necessarily know, is Saul's youngest son around at the moment still, or is he? Well,
there's no mention. So the only mention is Ishbosheth.
Yeah.
And the only other mention is Mephibosheth.
So
who was 5 when the report came that so he's only at this point he's only a 7-year-old boy.
Yeah.
So he's still too young to be king. But he is a potential heir.
Yeah. Well, and I suppose they're mentioning him obviously because he becomes
will appear
important
in chapter
later.
9.
But it could also be that maybe very much he might have been the next in line for the throne.
He very much was, and I think that's why it's here. It would appear that they're trying to point out Mephibosheth was heir to the throne, but 1, he's crippled. He couldn't be king. He probably wouldn't have been able to be king as a cripple. It'd be very unlikely. And 2, he's just a boy. So they could have put usually when they had a boy, they would put, what do they call it? A regent on the throne that would care for until the king came of age.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
But they didn't do that in this context.
No.
So,
it doesn't actually say that he's necessarily there either. That he's like, they've run away.
Town. Yes,
so
that's right.
So again, it might also be that, again, there could be that worry that the carer might have been like, oh, this child's now not safe.
Yes.
Because he's now a potential heir.
Because he's now a potential heir, and it's very likely that David will come after him.
Yeah.
And I think you're supposed to see that would be normal practice.
So
David would have come after him, so they've fled.
Yeah.
And then later, David, spoiler alert for next week, David will actually call and bless Mephibosheth. But that is why it's inserted into the story here.
Yep.
He potentially is the heir, had to get out of town, he was crippled, he had nothing going for him. So basically, it's their way of saying there is, other than Ishbosheth, there is no
other
potential heir. And perhaps that's what Rechab and Baana have picked up on because they're going, we're not happy with Ishbosheth.
We'd rather David.
We'd rather David. Well, he's the best of a bad bunch, so let's use it for our own political scheming. Let's kill Ishbosheth.
And then and Benjamin will still have power.
Benjamin will have power and we'll get power because we'll be able to use that as a scheme with David and we'll set up some kind of alliance with him and he'll be happy with us because we've finally, after 2 years of unrest, we've finally brought the kingdom to its knees.
Well, and they would have known that Mikhail went back.
Yep. All of that.
So
all of that stuff. So they're just, once again, these guys are politically scheming for their own benefit as well.
Yeah. So they went to Ishbosheth's house around noon as he was taking his midday rest. So he's having siesta in the afternoon. The doorkeeper, who had been sifting wheat, became drowsy and fell asleep. So Rechab and Baana slipped past her. So it's interesting that the person who was at the door
was a woman sifting wheat. Why is that interesting? Tell me what you think.
Well, no, like if the king in a time of war doesn't, their protection at the door
is
of
a
their
woman
room
sifting
is
wheat.
a woman sifting wheat.
Well, she could pick up the wheat and throw it in the guy's face.
It just shows that probably the situation was at the point where he was no longer king.
That's exactly the point.
Everyone knew it. He was no longer king. It was just a matter of time before David came and became king.
You got it. What king does not have a military guard outside their door?
Yeah.
Only a king.
Or there would have been
there's
a king's guard type thing. Like
absolutely.
Like even his armor bearer. Like
he's got no one.
No one.
That's what you're supposed to see. The fact that the only person looking after is a woman sifting wheat is not down on the woman. It's just to show that it's actually to show that level of depravity, the level of abasement that Ishbosheth has ended up at.
Yeah. So they went into the house, found him sleeping on the bed. They struck him and killed him and then cut off his head. Then, taking the head with them, they fled across the Jordan Valley through the night. When they arrived at Hebron, they presented I'm going to stuff it up
Ishbosheth.
Ishbosheth.
Head.
Ishbosheth's head to David. Look, they exclaimed to the king, here is the head of Ishbosheth, the son of your enemy Saul, who tried to kill you. Like, had they not heard about anything that happened so far?
They haven't taken any notice. Your enemy Saul. That's the last.
Your enemy
thing.
Saul,
David
and that's the thing is, like,
had written a beautiful poem about Saul.
Yeah, and I'm sure that would have found its way out because that's a couple of years since that's happened.
Yeah.
So they would have all known.
Yeah.
So again, it's just that maybe that blinding of power at that point. Today, the Lord has given my Lord, the king, revenge on Saul and his entire family. But David said to Rechab and Baanah, the Lord who saves me from all my enemies is my witness. Someone once told me, Saul is dead, thinking he was bringing me good news, but I seized him and killed him at Ziklag, which is chapter 1.
Chapter 1.
That's the reward I gave him for his news. How much more should I reward evil men who have killed an innocent man in his own house and on his own bed? Shouldn't I hold you responsible for his blood and rid the earth of you? So David ordered his young men to kill them, and they did. They cut off their hands and feet and hung their bodies beside the pool of Hebron. Then they took Ishbosheth's head and buried it in Abner's tomb in Hebron.
This gives us a bit more insight into chapter 1 because you're clearly getting more questions answered than we did. He's now saying he knows they were manipulative, just like the Amalekite was.
Yep.
It's worse for you guys because Saul died in battle.
Yep.
You killed him in peacetime like Joab killed Abner. But can you also see the contrast is he was prepared to do this for a stranger who killed Ishbosheth, but he wasn't prepared to do it for Joab, who killed Abner.
Yep.
This is a duplicitous treatment. This is him. Ultimately, this is David abusing his power. He has the power to kill both and bring judgment on both, but he does not bring judgment on Joab.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be, while it's noble, it's also showing David's weakness of character and lack of strength.
He can't bring his own family to account, but he's happy to bring account to everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, that's it in a nutshell. And maybe in the back of his mind is, I want to do this with Joab, but I don't think I've got the stomach for the family fallout that's going to happen. And I would get that. Yeah, I would totally understand that because it's not just about killing Joab. His own family. Then his sister's going to be upset with him. Yeah, you know, his older brothers he didn't have the best relationship with them anyway. Yeah. There's all kinds of family fallout, and that caused him to deal with Joab differently to how he dealt with these two guys. But nonetheless, it was very public judgment that tells us the downside of political maneuvering and trying to use our power to get ahead in life, get our influence. So, sobering story, hey? Yeah. Chapter 4. 1 to go.
Yeah, that was a quick one,
that was a quick one. Yeah. Good story.
Yes.
Yeah, well, bloody story, but...
Good story in terms of, good lessons. And it does have that, obviously that harkening back brings a bit more context, but then also introduces Mephibosheth as well.
Yes, it does. That's true. It brings that into it as well. Yep, absolutely. All right, chapter 5 coming up. Talk to you then. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bible. Wait, what? Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And you can also find us on all the socials. Just search The Bible. Wait, what? And to find out more about our church, just search C3 Camden, C3 Picton, or C3 Thirroul on the web or on the socials. Thanks for being with us today, and we look forward to talking to you on the next episode of The Bible. Wait, what?